What's up, everybody? Thralls here once again. I'm Necrotic.
I'm Jammin John.
And we have yet another album review, and one that I have been actually anticipating, and yet again, another one that we pulled from the underground. Because the underground generally has a lot of just, I don't know, great, nasty death metal, and yeah, we're kind of all about that here. So we're going to go over the latest offering from Obscene, Agony and Wounds. This comes out also on the 12th of July on Nameless Grave Records. Actually, this is a label transition for them because they were on Blood Harvest for a while. This band formed in 2017 in Indianapolis, Indiana. This is their third full-length overall. I'm a big fan of their first two albums, The Inhabitable Dark and From Dead Horizon to Dead Horizon. Plus, we saw this band play at Heavy Hell in 2022, and they absolutely crushed. And as soon as I heard they were working on a new album, I was stoked because this is just flat out vicious old school death metal. Features current and former members of bands like Demericus, Mother of Graves, and Acheron. And yeah, this is like pretty much one of those death metal acts, like if you just like riffs and just meaty hook after meaty hook, I'm pretty sure you're going to enjoy this.
I mean, to be honest with you, I think this record should be called Vicious, but Agony and Wounds makes a lot of sense too, and we'll get into that. From the previous albums, I remember them being a little bit more groove-laden, a little bit slower, a little bit more focused on things like chug and heavy riffs, and that's great. This record, though, comes out swinging and kind of stays in that department for a good 90% of the record.
Yeah, very thrashy, and I mean, I know that was an element in their sound before, but I feel like these first few tracks, the Cloverfield Panopticon, Watch Me When I Kill, I mean, I'm not kink-shaming there, but that definitely screams kink.
Still a felony if you watch, right?
It's a felony if you watch and then don't call someone, like, namely the cops.
Sure.
And Breathe the Decay. Immediately, like, the thing that kind of took me on this one were the just violent machine gun riffs, and kind of a callback to more, like, you know, Floridian death metal. Like, I got a lot of, like, Deicide, Malevolent Creation, early Morbid Angel in there, and believe me, Morbid Angel of course pops up because this is old school death metal, and I feel like you can't do old school death metal without throwing in a Morbid Angel tremolo.
I mean,
you know, hey, there are kinda rules to old school death metal, but this band has a lot of different stuff that they pull from. Like, I wouldn't call them like meat and potatoes, even though this is very rooted in 90s death metal. They have a lot of those core elements, but everything is seasoned well, and there are, you know, these fun little sides that kind of pop up. Like thrashy death metal, of course, that is a big Floridian thing, but they pepper in like lots of dissonant melodies. The opening of the Cloverland Panopticon comes in like miserably depressed Iron Maiden with some really pretty guitar harmonies, like right out of the gate. And vocally, this band, I think they almost kind of stand on their own. Their vocalist, Kyle Shaw, has some of the most gut-wrenching, agonized, tortured vocals. And after seeing him live, I was like, man, I don't know how your throat holds up.
Yeah, dude, it looked like it hurt when we saw him live. Like, it looked like his throat was bleeding and like, he just kept swallowing the blood. Like, it had to be, because it's not natural sounding.
No, but it totally works, and it gives this whole album like a very unsettling, dark atmosphere. Like, regardless if it gets like more brutal and groovy or thrashy and fast or a little bit more melodic or dismal, his vocals add this layer of atmosphere where, I mean, it just sounds like tortured. I'd say his vocal style kind of lurks somewhere between like Martin Van Drunen from Asphyx, which Asphyx, that's definitely an influence in here that I picked up, and Thomas Lindberg of At the Gates, which I definitely heard on the song Noxious Expulsion. That one has a little bit of like early mellow death to it, and melody is something that really pops up in here that I really wasn't expecting. Like, you know, this band definitely knows how to craft a good hook and a monstrous, powerful riff, but there are frequent like guitar harmonies on here that just have a more melodic draw to them. But again, going back to the vocals, it constantly feels unsettling. Those vocals give this album such a haunting quality. Like, you know, it still 100% feels like you're listening to an old school death metal album, but also I feel like there's like a weird setting in your head, or at least in my head, that you're like lost in the woods and being chased down by like some Yeti with throat cancer, and it keeps getting closer with every
Yeah, he keeps stepping on Legos. It's in the Reaper's Blessing, actually. The last like minute of that song, it's just just over and over, and all I can think about is a Yeti stepping on Legos or pulling cactus shards out of his ass or something.
At least he's alerting you to his presence. That's
I mean, that's a good point.
Yeah, good point. I mean, you're still probably going to get your arms pulled off, but, whatever.
And yet another band with the production of, 90s sounding death metal. Super crunchy guitars. I was reminded a lot of the guitar sound on the most recent Rotten Sound album. Just snarling, grimy, disgusting guitars. I really thought the drums sat in a really nice pocket. Again, very natural sounding drums. It didn't sound clicky at all. That snare's got a good thwack to it. The cymbals are mixed really nicely because there's a ton of cymbal accents once again here in yet another band. Where the drums aren't just, simple blast beats or simple D beats. There's a lot going on, and you can hear it. And it all sits really nicely in the mix. Nothing really overpowers anything. And you'd think in something this crazy, because this record is just non-stop pummeling, you think you'd miss something, but you can hear it. It all sounds really nice.
And yeah, this album's pace, I think, is definitely awesome. It starts off, again, very fast and very thrashy, but as this album goes on, it really starts to open up and explore different modes. There's a lot of groove-centric songs that just bring the riff. Death's Denial, The Reaper's Blessing, Rotting Behind the Madness. These songs, they kind of just latch on that big chuggy groove, drive it home with just ferociously catchy riffs. Mm-hmm. And they don't come across as grabbing too much at melody, and it just generates a good, powerful hook, one that you just want to headbang to. The Reaper's Blessing opens up with the most sinister of Morbid Angel tremolos. It's well broken up too. I like that a lot of these riffs have clever accents on them. It kind of keeps them from being a little too derivative in terms of oh yeah, that's just straight up Morbid Angel. And I mean, I did immediately compare that to Morbid Angel, but there's these fun little hitches and dissonant accents, and then the lead work on here is quite melodic overall. Almost all the leads on here add that kind of just melodic push, whether it's a lead harmony on top of the main riff or it's a really scorching, shreddy solo. Rotting Behind the Madness does a great job of just kind of working that straightforward bolt thrower, jungle rot, obituary groove.
I love that song so much.
Locks on it and just mows over you. It's chuggy, it's heavy, but there are melodies peppered all over the place to kind of give it a little bit more accent. And again, the fact that Kyle's vocals, again, are so ghoulish and dry. They sound like they made him record his vocals in an old abandoned barn in the middle of a cold snap, around minus 20 out here.
Which happens a lot in both this area and Indianapolis. So
it's the same place.
It makes sense, right? Yeah, it's 3 hours off from each other, but it's the same place.
Yeah, you cross the border and I feel like I'm still in Ohio. I'm pretty sure it's the exact opposite. Did we cross in Ohio? I was I don't know. This looks like fucking Indiana.
I feel like I'm in Ohio, but in fact, I'm in a place that's way less fun.
Just pull over and spark a joint in front of a cop and see what happens. You'll know. But yeah, this band is fronted by a Wendigo. I'm reasonably sure. But no, it's not. I've met Kyle. He's a nice dude.
Yes. And this record, for as balls out as it is, the first 3 songs are written in blood and covered in flies. I mean, we're talking just crazy balls to the wall, speed and thrash and whatnot. But there's still a bunch of mid-tempo moments too. Death's Denial, The Reaper's Blessing, Rotting Behind the Madness, Dressed in Corpses. They still put groove in there so you're not just totally floored all the time. You still got enough room to breathe and get up and punch your buddy a few times.
And again, they do enough with the riff work to really make the songs kind of jump out a little bit more. Across the board, listening to this, I didn't feel like anything felt too stock or too on one particular style. Yeah, there's definitely a bolt thrower vibe on one song or a Morbid Angel vibe on another song, but there's other elements in there to kind of open them up. The Reaper's Blessing, well, it definitely has huge Morbid Angel vibes. It's got just deep tremolos. There's a cool kind of hitch to the riff too that just kind of screams Trey. Towards the end of it, it kind of starts morphing a bit, and then by the end of it, it has this more melancholic vibe to it, and honestly, it gets a little bit blackened. And yet another thing that really works well with Kyle's vocals. Dressed in Corpses, those corpses are all wearing vintage Cannibal Corpse shirts.
Yes.
It sounds like old school Cannibal Corpse. It even has the little hammer-ons or pull-offs or whatever they are that just make that instant oh god, that's Cannibal Corpse.
Yep, I knew it from the very beginning. I just said, oh, Cannibal Corpse.
Yeah, it could have been something you'd heard on The Bleeding years ago. Either way, Cannibal Corpse vibe right away. It's got some like double time D beats and like just heavy grooves to it. But as the song goes on, it gets more melodic, more epic. It has like a totally different vibe that just kind of isn't Cannibal Corpse. Like it's, I don't know, like more bleak and almost kind of doomy.
Yeah, it's epically evil. And the tremolos, too. There's a lot of tremolos, but there's also not a lot of tremolos. I don't know how to say it. Like, there's still a bunch of groove, but the tremolos are nicely placed. They often use them as tags on the end of these really, like, crazy machine gun riffs, or the times when it does get more mid-tempo and slow down a little bit. There's always a harmonized tremolo tag to kind of just drag you back under. In the instant that you try to come up for air, the record's like, nope, back down into the depths of hell we go. And you're like, all right, cool, my bad.
And that's kind of like some of the pacing overall. Like they hang on to the right riff for the right amount of time. It's there long enough for it to really sink in. And the transitions from riff to riff, from part to part, are very smooth and often kind of clever. Like the transition on Death's Denial, there's a section where you get that kind of single kick, thrashy blast beat. Tremolos, it's just like machine gun fire. And then there's this like isolated kind of drum and bass little accented transition into the groovy section, and I just think it's like one of the coolest things of the album. Like that's a clever transition. It's not just a start-stop like cymbal grab or anything like that. There's a cool fill in it, and that's kind of a frequent thing on here. And as the album goes on, like more surprises kind of come up, like things that are like, again, seasoning on top of just already solid, straightforward death metal.
Yeah, like, once you get to Death's Denial, and I'm not knocking the rest of the record. The entire record is great. Once you get to Death's Denial, though, it's a steady progression of awesome song after awesome song after awesome song. Like, they really kind of let the record open up and breathe a little bit, and cool things like those transitions happen, a bunch of moments from fast to slow. There's a ton more groove that appears, and it just seems to get more epically evil.
Sounds like Oceans of Rot. Another groovier number, but they pepper in like an almost Carcass-like harmonized tag at the end. Like, all right, that is just something that kind of like lifts the song up from being just a standard kind of like groovy banger. But they also throw in synths later too. Like there are synths peppered in, and in terms of atmosphere, like generally there's like some chattering or samples. I want to say there's like a little bit of radio chatter between the Cloverland Panopticon and Watch Me When I Kill. But in terms of like synths, I think that's the only place it really pops up. And it adds a lot to the music because you haven't heard it all throughout the album, and it gives it this more doomy sort of like gothic vibe. But at the same time, the groove that kind of hits, and when they kind of drop out the synths, it's almost like an old school metallic hardcore, like Earth Crisis groove. That also shows up on Breathe the Decay too, which I just went back and listened to Destroy the Machines not too long ago. I was like, yeah, no, these grooves are familiar, and they still hit like a son of a bitch. Probably the biggest surprise though is the title track. I was not expecting a full-on, almost peace-filled death doom song. Like this song in particular just has a very melancholic, My Dying Bride, Paradise Lost, sort of just like gloomy, down in the dumps, absolutely defeated vibe. Huge droning riffs. It's complete Bummersville. It legit sounds like, well, the title, Agony and Wounds. It legit kind of sounds like someone dragging themselves, bleeding out to find a nice quiet place to die.
Yeah, it's an immediate mood setter. The opening is quiet, somber, like standalone piano, and it's got a gradual fade in. You're like, all right, we're about to get sad here. The guitars come in, and it's this absolutely like crying, weeping lead, and you're like, oh man, here come the tears. And then after the crying, weeping lead, it gets heavy as all get out, absolutely commanding death doom. I love it.
Oh, dude,
I love it.
Comes down on you with the weight of like, I don't know, like 8 billion gallons of tears. The song is essentially like getting your heart pulled out in slow motion. It's absolutely agonized, and I love just this whole like kind of last gasp sort of energy. Like this was it. We gave it everything, and now we're just we're dying. We're dead. And I don't know, like there's something about the way this album caps off that like, like it sounds like everything else in here was you guys giving your all, and this was like the last little bit you had. Right. And again, a completely different avenue, and I don't really remember that from the earlier stuff. The earlier stuff, way more latched on to just like, a straight up old school death metal formula. Nothing wrong with that. Again, I love those albums, but this album does a lot more. Like, there's more on here than I was expecting, and it's all executed really well. For the life of me, I really can't find a riff or honestly a song on here that I didn't enjoy on some level. Like, this album is like kind of like an all-you-can riff buffet, and just when you think it was like, well, you know, I think this could use just like a little bit more groove. Like, oh, no, we got the groove buffet. We'll slice you some fresh groove right in here and plop that right in your fucking plate.
Yeah. There really wasn't anything about this record that I didn't like. Watch Me When I Kill, I thought might have been a little short, but it doesn't really matter because what it's sandwiched in between and what happens in the rest of the record is just perfection. Even when I tried to pick this apart to find something I didn't like, I couldn't find anything.
Yeah.
And that's a really good sign.
That was the only kind of gripe that I had was Watch Me When I Kill was just a little bit short. And it's got so many cool things packed in it despite it being short. I just wish there was more of it. So that's really not much of a complaint at all.
So overall, I'm going to give this record 4.5 stars, and it's a pretty solid 4.5. I enjoyed every minute of this. Like I said in the very beginning, this record, Vicious should have been the name of this record. It's not. Agony and Wounds makes a lot of sense, but man, this record is downright vicious. Non-stop, awesome riffing, awesome melodies, harmonies, tremolos. Very akin to old school Morbid Angel, lots of Floridian death metal influences. It's pummeling, it's heavy, it's catchy. The melodies are awesome, the harmonies are great, and they're all peppered in at the right times too. Like, there's not overwhelming moments of harmony or melody or where you go like, I could have done without that. Like, all the seasoning is placed correctly. The meal as itself, the full course meal, tastes delicious, and that's how they presented it. Yeah, the vocals sound like, again, a Yeti running through the woods, stepping on Legos, chasing after its last meal. You guys are kind of pissed off in Indiana, aren't you? It's probably because they won't legalize weed. I get it. I get it. That's upsetting. But yeah, this is another great offering from Obscene. I highly recommend. First of all, if you've heard Obscene before, definitely check this out. This is a definite progression from where they came from before. And even then, I always thought Obscene kicked ass. If you haven't had a chance to see these guys live, I would highly recommend it. If you're a fan of bands like Morbid Angel, Malevolent Creation, Rotten Sound, I'm going to say it, it's in there. Deicide, 100%. Yeah, just check these guys out. This was a great record. I enjoyed every minute of it.
I am also at a 4.5. I loved every song in here. And legit, like, yeah, I bring up Floridian death metal, and I know that's definitely there with all their thrashy riffs, but there's a lot more, too. Like, dude, Peaceful Death Doom. There's bolt thrower stuff all over here. There's just great grooves, great riffs. Again, creepier than hell vocals that really make this album kind of stand out a bit because they are kind of a unique delivery. And just riff after riff after riff. Melodic aspects that I absolutely love because not only do they really make the song stand out, but they also don't hang out too long or take away from the heaviness of the songs because every song on here is heavier than hell. While this definitely has a lot of familiarity just because it sounds like a ton of bands that I love, I like the fact that they kind of make it their own with like clever riff accents, really fun transitions. This album is just flat out monstrous. And I absolutely love the production on here. It was actually mixed by Noah Buchanan of Nunslaughter and mastered by Dan Lowndes of Crucimentum, which, yeah, that dude's roster of mixing and mastering is just insane. If you love old school death metal flat out, I could just stop there, but of course I'm going to name off some bands, probably some ones he already said. Morbid Angel is definitely one of them. Also, Asphyx, I would even say like Pestilence in spots too. Bolt Thrower, a little bit of My Dying Bride, hell, even some Gate Creeper in there too. I would even say there's like just a little bit of overlap too with Mother of Graves, especially at the end. This album is fantastic. Check it out. Check out their other two albums too, but I think this might be their best one yet. So, if you enjoyed this review, give it a thumbs up, and if you are new to the channel, subscribe, because we do stuff like this all the time. We are also on Patreon. If you'd like to help us out there, there's a link down below to thrallsmetal.com. Our Patreon link is there. It is also in our channel up in the banner in the bottom right-hand corner. But if you're looking for Thralls Metal stuff, you have to go to thrallsmetal.com. We have t-shirts, both old and new. The old ones are discounted, provided we have your size. And we even have hats, too. So if you're looking for any of that stuff, click the link down below.
And as always, tons of stuff coming from Thralls of Metal, album reviews, discography rankings. We're filming the Almighty Meshuggah this weekend. That's going to be a real killer time. And
ranking, not Meshuggah, actually.
Not Meshuggah, actually, yeah. They're not going to be here.
No.
But we're filming the ranking. It'll be fun. It'll be not fun trying to explain the order that these albums are put in. Whatever, not a big deal. We're doing that. Nick has tons of stuff, collection updates, because this motherfucker can't stop collecting CDs. Is it metal? Is it not metal? States of metal, tons of metal things. Anyway, all this junk that we do on Thralls of Metal, we do for you guys. We appreciate you. We thank you for your support, continually tuning in and watching our reviews and talking to us and hanging out on our live streams. And it's a blast. This is the best thing we've ever done with our lives, which may say a lot. It may not say a lot.
It says plenty.
But yeah, this is the best thing that we do, and we appreciate it, and it's all because of you guys. Thank you so much for being a part of Thralls of Metal with us.
Yeah, you guys absolutely rule, and again, tons of stuff coming your way. So one more big thank you, because you guys fucking rule.
Thank you.
And we will catch you later.